I accidentally ruined a pregnancy announcement for complete strangers, then, months later, was told I was responsible for their best story of their life. What are your most awkward stories turned awesome? Back when I had short hair, a cop pulled over my father for running a red light on our way to a UA basketball game and asked why he ran a red light. My father replied, "I didn't see it." The cop asks where we were headed and my dad replies that we're going to the basketball game. I meanwhile was sitting in the backseat of the car reading my novel. The cop says exactly this. "Well, since your little girl is being so good and quiet reading back there, I'll let you go." I told the cop, "Excuse me. I'm a boy. Do you see any breasts on this chest or long flowing luxurious hair on my head?" The cop blushed the brightest red I've ever seen a man blush and said, "I am so sorry." And he took out his wallet, pulled out a $50 bill and gave it to me. My best mate invited his close childhood friend along to the beach with me and my girlfriend. They secretly had been crushing on each other for years, unbeknownst to me and each other. Long story short, I was taking pictures of them at sunset and jokingly told them to kiss. They did. That night they spilled their guts to each other and now they've been dating for 4 months with plans to marry. I have a beautiful shot of their first kiss on my computer. Midway through my first year at college, I took my recently dumped friend with me to a party. She ended up getting trashed and slobbering all over this random dude, who was almost as trashed. Being the good friend I am, I help her to the porch so she can puke her guts out. Then the random dude comes up and starts going on about how much he liked her, to make sure I get her home okay, etc. I get my friend back to her place and she breaks down, telling me she didn't like the guy at all. I felt bad because the guy seemed like a fairly classy dude. But what can you do? The next fall, my roommates invite a bunch of people over to chill, and one of the guys looks familiar. Before he leaves I ask, "This is a weird question, but were you at a party at last winter?" He replies, "Yeah." At the same time, we both realized who the other person was, and instantly became best friends. Right through the rest of college. TLDR, my drunk friend hooked up with a random dude. 6 months later I met the dude and we became best friends. One of my best guy friends and I were hanging out at a bar with friends. We had slept together once before, but we weren't officially dating. It was getting late, and he said he was disappointed he would have to leave because he had work the next morning. Mildly drunk, I said, "Why don't you tell your boss that your girlfriend got you sick? Or something?" Pause, oops. To which he replied, "My girlfriend?" He smiled. "My girlfriend?" I thought about it. Smiled back. "Yeah. Your girlfriend." Then we kissed. Went back to his place. He called in sick the next morning, and we had brunch at what is to this day still our favorite special brunch spot. Engaged and cohabiting 4 beautiful years later equals. I recently finished a humanities class that is basically just community service. We have monthly meetings and the last month I was asked to be the keynote speaker at our end of the year banquet. I'm not a very confident public speaker. I tend to get the shakes. But I figured I would have no problem giving a speech to 50 or so of my peers, so I accepted the honor, not quite realizing what I had gotten myself into. I wrote a short speech a few weeks in advance and showed up a half hour before the actual ceremony began. During socializing hour, and realized immediately that I had made an enormous mistake. The hall was packed with more than 400 students, parents and staff. Even the college president was in attendance. To make it worse, I hadn't gotten the memo that it was a formal event. I was wearing jeans, slides, and the obnoxiously bright orange shirt that they had handed out to all the seniors in the class. I went weak-kneed as soon as I walked in the door. With 15 minutes until the start of the ceremony, I took off to the local Walmart to buy a shirt and a razor. I proceeded to shave in the Walmart restroom with the limp-ass faucets that only dribble out a couple of teaspoons of water at a time. It took me nearly 10 minutes to eradicate my neck beard, and by the time I showed up, the ceremonies had already begun. I walked on stage with a glass of water and a razor-burned face to recount my most recent dilemma as my icebreaker. The room burst into side-splitting laughter and I was able to walk off the stage with my dignity mostly intact. So there was this creepy guy who was a friend of a friend of a friend. He was not exactly invited to large group gatherings, but not turned away either because he was known through the church blah blah blah. Well, he was constantly trying to put the moves on me and the guy I was starting to date sat next to me. He caught onto me, helped me vibe and held my hand and kissed me. Discouraged. MR. Creepy says. Wait. Are you seriously dating this guy? I turn to him, you down? He shrugs. Yeah, I'm down. He walks away fuming. A few months later we are actually very happily exclusive. He again, but less forcibly, is putting the moves on a bit during a pool party. My love machine scoops me up and sneakily moves my favorite ring to my left hand while our backs were turned. He proudly and quietly announces we are engaged. MR. Creepy again skulks away not to be seen for some time. We have been together since and we were truly engaged 5 months later. I was working as a cashier in a local hardware store. You placed orders in the back and they were coded with your name and came up to the one register we had open. Someone with a kind of generic name, John Brown, said they had an order from the back. I rang that up first not thinking about it and then the 100-ish plumbing pieces he had. I tell him the total and it is thousands more than he expected. I tell him I pulled up his name and repeat his name to him. He says, yes, that is me. So I start saying that is his order when the guy behind him interrupts and introduces himself with the same name. While I'm ringing everything up again. They made plans for a barbecue and he was going to help him with the work at his new house. They became friends and I had to spend another 30 minutes ringing everything up again. When I was a young guy I worked in this restaurant where I also was dating the banquet manager. One day I come into the office where my girlfriend was complaining to this guy about what a shit I was being. I deserved it. I was in my early 20s and a bit wild. But I knew I was being a shit so I wasn't mad at anyone. His back was to me. And he was totally hitting on her. While also telling her she deserved better. She did. She went white. And he realized that something was up. He turns around. Sees me. And I give him the steely look. But inside I'm cracking up at the awkwardness of the whole thing. I said something, I forget what. Turned around. And went out before I started laughing. She and I broke up not long after. But that guy went on to be my best friend. Years later. I'm retelling the story of how we met and told his girlfriend that story. Turns out. He'd been embarrassed about the incident for years. I thought he knew that I had never been mad. But he didn't and was really relieved. I'm 12 hours late for this one. But here it is. When I was 17. I was pregnant and planning on giving the baby up for adoption. Everyone knew this and felt it was the right thing and tried to be supportive. At about 8 months. I went to a party and this guy that I didn't know was drunk and got really excited that I was going to be a mom. He was gushing about his new baby and how amazing it is and how wonderful it was going to be for me and how even if it seems scary it will work out and be the best thing that ever happened to me. I didn't really say much and he was mortified the next day when a mutual friend told him that I was 17 and not planning on keeping the baby. It had literally never occurred to me that having a baby could be nice. I was the youngest of 7 and kind of hated babies. That drunken angel was the reason I kept my daughter. She is now 14 and incredibly awesome. And we have not only made it worked. We have excelled at life and I couldn't possibly be happier that someone's awkward gaffe changed my entire world forever. First semester at college and I'm walking outside to go to ultimate practice. A girl was looking around frantically. She knew my friend and asked if he could help her out. She needed to print out tickets for a Toby Keith concert that she had to leave for in 10 minutes. My friend said no. But I said yes. I'm a very shy, awkward kid who wouldn't think twice about talking to this girl. She's blonde and one of the more attractive girls on campus. I said maybe about 2 full sentences the entire time she used it. But apparently that's all I needed to say. A few months later and it's winter break. I liked something on her Facebook and she ended up starting to talk to me. It turns out she has been attracted to me ever since that one day and never spoke up about it until then. We've been dating for about 9 months and every day is the best. TLDR. Helped a hot girl who needed to print something. Ended up dating a few months later and still going quite strong. Summer, if you're reading this, you'd are best. I once ruined a surprise wedding shower at the restaurant I worked for. I had no idea that it was a surprise. A bunch of ladies entered claiming that they had a reservation for a wedding shower and I seated them. Then 2 stragglers came in 10 minutes later asking if a few women had come in earlier. I replied, "Oh, you mean for the wedding shower?" And the one woman gave me death eyes while the other said, "Oh, I guess this is my shower." I didn't know it was a shower. I thought it was my friend's birthday. My response was to turn bright red and apologize profusely. I then gave them to another server so I wouldn't feel bad the rest of the night. So me and my ex had been broken up for a while. We'd fucked a couple of times and were still pretty good friends. So one day she texts me. She seemed pretty pissed off and said she had to talk to me. So later I get a call from her. She was not happy. Can't remember the exact reason. But she was pissed. So she says she doesn't think we can talk anymore. Blah blah drama. Meanwhile, in my head I'm really confused. Still not sure why she's pissed and she's not about to explain it. At this point I think, fuck it. I'm gonna go full diplomat. To this day I do not remember how I did it, what I said, or how the conversation turned to this. But we ended up with her asking me to have a threesome with her and a female friend she'd met at uni. I need to let my subconscious deal with these things more often. TLDR. Ex called to fight with me. Ended up in a threesome. I don't know. Mine isn't exactly awkward, but it was one of those moments that meant more to 2 other people than me. One night my friends went to a pub that does karaoke every Sunday. I was drunk and butchering Yellow by Coldplay when I saw 2 people slow dancing as I sang. I was hitting notes that didn't exist. It was bad. When it finished I wobbled down from the stage and towards my booth full of buds and booze when the couple raced over to me to tell me that Yellow was their wedding song. They had been having a bad night or a fight, something like that, and heard me start to sing this and fell in love all over again. It was really sweet. All I really remember for sure is that the girl said to me, "What a wonderful moment. Thank you." Everyone who was there that night still laughs about it since they know how awful my singing truly was. I was spending the 4th of July 2009 in a little condo in Steamboat Springs, Colo, with some good friends. Everything about the weekend was shaping up perfectly. Some other people who paid backed out, so everyone got their own bed and we had more than ample amounts of alcohol and food. The first night that we were there we started playing Circle of Death King's Cup Never Have I Ever. We made up our own rules as we always did. One of the cards was when was the last time. I so happened to draw the card and said when was the last time you had sex, obviously to brag about the sex I had that morning with this girl I had been seeing. I started and the answers went clockwise. The girl sitting to my right said May. Next up was her boyfriend, who took a long pause, looked right at her, and said February. The awkwardness filled the room immediately. Everyone finished their answers haphazardly and he stood up, walked down the hall and closed the door to their bedroom for the weekend. She eventually followed. We proceeded to make road drinks and walk up the mountain. While the 2 figured it out. The rest of the weekend was sort of tough and awkward. But now 18 months later they are one of the happiest couples I know. I was working out of town for the summer when my sister flew into a nearby city for her cousin-in-law's wedding. Since the only time I had to visit with her was right after work. On the night of the event, she and I agreed to meet out in the parking lot, hang out for a little bit, and then go on our ways. Once I arrived, she insisted I come inside and sit down at a table and get something to drink. I blanched at the idea, considering I was in my paint and sawdust covered stage carpentry clothes. She insisted it would be fine, and pointed out a few of the most casually attired wedding guests to put me at ease. Not 5 feet into the reception hall are we when I hear this squeal of delight. "Wedding crasher!" cheered the bridge. She bounced up to us. "OMG, I have a real wedding crasher." It was about then that I remembered the Wedding Crashers movie had been released a few short months before. Obviously she knew I was my sister's twin. What with the resemblance and all. And she was fine with my coming in. The fact I crashed her wedding was just the icing on the cake. So now there are photos in the official wedding album of me and the bride. Me and the new couple. My sister and I with the bride. And so on. Every time they see us, I am joyfully greeted. It's an honor to be their official wedding crasher. But I am still mortified that I'll let my sister talk me into walking into their wedding wearing a "Say No to Drugs" t-shirt and cute off jeans. Me and some guys met some girls on vacation. Hang out with them until 2 days later they ditch us for another group of guys because they have weed. We're generally annoyed. Fast forward another couple days. We're sitting by a campfire in town when another completely different group of guys we have never seen before just randomly sit by the fire with us. We all just mind our own business because it was a public fire by a restaurant and figure they just want to stay warm. About 5 minutes later we start a conversation with them. Turns out they are the brothers of these girls that we met. And the girls we met lied about their age to us. Told us they were 18. They were 14 fucking years old. We tell the brothers they ditched us for weed. The brothers are pissed that their 14-year-old sisters are smoking with some other guys. We all decide to leave the fire together and go to Starbucks. Then bam. There we see the girls leaned up against a wall talking to the guys. All of us proceed past the guys and whisper in their ears. They are 14 years old. Double quote. The look on their face. I will never forget. One of the most glorious moments of my entire life. Breckenridge, Colorado. No better place. A woman I work with had just had a baby and asked me to be said baby's first babysitter. We're pretty tight. Which I had no problem with considering I'm like the Pied Piper with kids. Minus the leading into a cave of course. So, I'm babysitting an infant and an 8-year-old. No problem. Got this. Put them to bed. Decide to watch Archer on their Netflix. Still good. Here's something in the backyard. Being a strong, black-belted independent woman I decide to go survey premises. So I go outside. Realize it's just the apartment complex behind them. No big deal. Go back to watch Archer. Oh shit, the door's locked. In a blind panic I ran back and forth between the front and back doors attempting to open clearly locked barriers. Whilst vaulting their 6-foot fences. Around the third lap of freakout I discover there's a gate and decide to call the parents. Out for their first date since spawn. So, fully out of breath, I try one more bright idea of banging on the 8-year window trying to wake her up. No avail and neighbor dog goes insane. End of story. Parents think it's hilarious and still bring up crying. Mosquito. Sweating me on their front porch freaking out over being a negligent baby watcher. Also, the 8-year-old may be traumatized by a night where a stranger banged on her window late at night. Who knows? Second weekend at Giant College in City as a freshman was incredibly daunting. It was really hard to find friends, and even if you did click with someone in one of the stupid orientation events. Our school is so huge that unless you go balls out socially successful penguin and ask them to go to a movie or something with you 15 minutes after meeting them, you'll probably never see them again. So, I'm thankfully in a class with a girl that I get along with well enough. And late in the week she asks if I want to come to a party at a bar that had been rented out with her that weekend. Thankful to finally have been asked to do something with the prospect of making a real friend. I'm super excited about it. Sounds so lame now. But this college really is fucking huge and I was so overwhelmed. Fast forward to Friday. I meet her at this bar. We have a great night. Make some real friend headway. Suddenly it's 3 AM and we decide to go home. My dorm is across the city via a really sketchy walk, and being the terrified freshmen that we were, neither of us thought me making that walk alone was a good idea. New friend offers to let me stay in her dorm. Her suite mate is out for the weekend, so I have a bed to sleep in. We get back to her dorm. Drunk and tired. And lo and behold, her crazy sweet mate has not only locked the door to her room, but zipped the doorknob. It's a college dorm, so no couch. New friend awkwardly asks if I want to sleep in her tiny ass college twin bed with her. Keep in mind we've had at most 4 conversations prior to this night. And I can tell she's hesitant to ask but also doesn't want to kick me out. I'm unfamiliar with the subway and don't want to walk back alone, so I agree. And we spend the entire night spooning in a tiny twin bed. Wake up the next morning to her roommate, who had barely conversed with her at this point, giving us extremely quizzical glances. 4 years later and about to graduate, we're still living together and she's become my best friend from college. I guess it's good, or else it would have made for a few weird exchanges in the hallway. And the roommate has also become a great friend. TL. DR spooned with my best friend first week of college before we were friends at all. One time my friend's grandma died. So we wore all black and tried to look super fancy. Because we were preteens. I don't know. After the funeral we went out to dinner at one of those chain restaurants because nothing pairs with crying quite like wordplay themed appetizers. So we're sitting there and our server comes up and he's bursting with flair and bouncing everywhere and so ready to tell us about the specials that he's just going to explode with compliments. So he does. So girls, you look super nice. Must be headed to a fun time. You're all dressed up. Got a big date? Big dance? Love it. Love dancing. You all look souped for a big night. Where's your dates? Going solo? Cute. So cute. Tell me about your big plans. He's foaming with excitement. Here are a bunch of awkwardly dressed up preteens and he's like 20 something and I bet he thinks we think he's so cute and charming, and my mom is probably going to give him a monster tip, but I'm 13 and I fucking hate everybody, so of course I have to be the one that looks at him straight in the eyes, in the most deadpan voice I've got, and say, "No. We just came from a funeral. Her grandma died." His face dropped so quickly that it was actually painful to watch. It was the most awkward moment I have ever created to date. And I am an awkward situation maestro. Never before had I witnessed someone actually stumble over their words out of sheer embarrassment. He was so flustered he couldn't get out more than a couple grumbles that sounded a little bit like sorry but more like MMMGGGHRHDJ, and then he just turned around and fled. Afterwards we giggled like the horrible little creatures that are 13-year-old girls. But it was thigh-fuckingly awkward for that guy. Poor waiter. Also, our food was free, so that was awesome. Fuck your potato skins. I caught my mom cheating on my dad. I knew this girl online and turns out my mom met her dad online and went to go see him. Somehow the girl put 2 and 2 together and messaged me that my mom was there. I realized my mom had been gone for days. Not at her aunt's funeral, but with another man. She was always a drama queen and mean-spirited a lot. My mom comes online after I demand to talk to her and tells me that my dad knows. Turns out their marriage was failing and he wanted her to see if someone else could make her happy, so supported her decision to find someone new. I go to my dad in tears and ask if they are getting a divorce. He hugs me and says they probably are. My dad is 6'5" or so and about 350 pounds. He was in his tighty whities at the time and suddenly breaks into a dance to the beat of The Heat Is On by Glenn Free singing "The Bitch Is Gone." The bitch is G1. The sight of it was so hilarious to me I started laughing through my tears. To this day, whenever I think of my parents' divorce I think of this somehow funny moment when my dad was being a big goofy fuck dancing around in his underwear singing his parody of "The Heat Is On." Double quote. Went to an NFL game and tailgated with a few friends. One friend brought a new girl he had been seeing. First time I met her. I'm drunk and talking to both of them and I ask them if they're together. Evidently, they had yet to have that conversation. But they ended up having it on the walk into the stadium. I was invited to their wedding 3 years later. I get drunk at a party. There is a noise complaint. Everyone leaves. I head back towards my flat. Walking with 2 women I'd met at the party. I have a girlfriend. Anyway. One of them mentions they need to use the toilet. And I say, "Oh. I have a toilet at my flat." Come on over. We get back to the flat. One of them wanders into the living room and meets my flatmate. The other goes to the washroom. Then comes out and sits down in the living room. I'm thinking to myself, whatever. I wanted to go to bed. But I suppose it's socializing time. 'Cause it'd be rude to kick him out. So we play a drinking game. Over the course which I learn they live very far away. And it's very late. I recommend to them, drunkenly and not very elegantly, that they spend the night on the couches. They clearly take this as an attempt to sleep with them. Probably due to the drunken, not well thought out way of saying it. Which was not my intent. And it gets awkward. They leave. And I go to sleep. The girlfriend isn't in town. Still waiting for the story to turn out awesome. I once shit my pants on vacation. We ate some strange food in Brazil and long story short, I shit my pants through my shorts and into my socks while getting ready to go out. The weird thing is, I didn't even feel sick. I think it was just some kind of fish that I couldn't digest the oil. This may sound unremarkable, but it was one of those ones where you fart and shit comes out. However, usually you know when poo accidentally comes out. This one, I honestly thought I just farted and then felt warm liquid running down my leg into my sock. This might sound funny, but it's the most terrifying thing to have happen to you. For the rest of the trip, every time I farted, I had a shred of doubt in my mind. To this day, I still have that thought in the back of my mind. I tell this story and people think it's so funny, but it's one of my biggest fears. This isn't about me, but I was there. My boyfriend and I were at an event and we see our friend there. She was in an open relationship with a really close friend of my boyfriend. After the event, my boyfriend took a photo of her making out with some dude and sent it to the friend's brother, who eventually sent it to the friend. My boyfriend kept talking about it as if the girl cheated, but I kept saying she didn't because that's what an open relationship is. When the friend saw the picture, he had a long talk with the girl and they decided to become an official couple. Neither of them were mad at my boyfriend. But I wonder if they realize that my boyfriend was the one who truly brought them together. When I was in college, we used to play a drinking game called the Buffalo Club. You weren't allowed to ever drink with your glass bottle pitcher in your right hand. If you were drinking with your right hand and were caught, any of the other members of the Buffalo Club would shout "Buffalo" at you and you had to chug the remainder of whatever you were drinking on the spot. The way you recruited new members was to just randomly ask the person if you could borrow a nickel. Since most people, even broke college students, will readily loan you 5 cents, they usually hand it over. Then you inform them that, like it or not, they just paid their dues and are now members of the Buffalo Club. The year after I left school, I returned to party with some friends that were a year younger than me. There was a new girl there sitting around the table and she kept drinking with her right hand. I knew my friends and was absolutely sure that she had to be in the club if she was one of their drinking buddies now. I waited until the next time she took a drink and pointed at her and shouted "Buffalo." My friend sitting next to me immediately leaned over and whispered pointedly, "She doesn't have a left hand." After that, I noticed that she always kept her left hand, or should I say her left wrist stump, tucked in her pocket or under her shirt. I was horrified. But she either didn't hear me, didn't understand, or played it off like it was no big deal. I have a rule to never, ever bring up a pregnancy unless a woman talks about it first. There were a few embarrassing incidents with women just being chubby. But the worst one to cause the self-imposed rule happened about 10 years ago. I worked in a drugstore and a guy I knew came in all excited getting prenatal vitamins and told me about how long they had been trying. How excited his wife and their families were. Yada yada. The next day I saw his wife in the store, so I went up and congratulated her, telling her how happy I was for them. She looked at me and started crying and told me I lost this one too. I felt about 2 inches tall. Hang around me when you are obviously pregnant? That fact will remain the elephant in the room unless you start talking about it. I wound up interrupting a threesome on my way home from work. They were in the car next to mine with one of their windows down, so I could hear everything that was going on. As I open my door, the girl freaks out and gets everyone to stop for a second. I get in my car. One of the guys pops out and gives me a nervous smile. I told him it's all cool. Then I went home and applied eye bleach. Later that week, I was working until closing and had a party of 8 come in for a reservation. One of them recognized me as that guy who made things really awkward. They ended up buying me dessert at work, which was pretty nice of them. TL. DR watch threesome. Get cake. I was invited to a graduation party for this girl who was in my class in high school. And there were tons of people there. Her parents were really chill. And always seemed to like me. It probably helped that I dated her sister a year or 2 back. And because I spent a bunch of time at their house during the summer. Anyways. Back on track. Everyone was swimming, playing volleyball, generally chatting it up. And talking in the pool house. When me, under the influence of teenage hunger, goes inside. I see a shit ton of food that people were munching on. Appetizers. Soda. Chips. Pretty much everything. The one thing that stuck out to me, however, was the prized graduation pizza. I took a slice while everyone was outside. Hey. Why not? And it was amazing. I promptly loaded my plate and went outside to tell everyone that pizza was ready. I opened the door and yelled for everyone to listen to me. I told them I just had a pizza. No ordinary pizza. But a pizza filled with fucking anchovies. Lo and behold. Her mom walks into me and tells me that they were saving the pizza for after the appetizers. I immediately told her to excuse me, as this made me feel uneasy. I went to the bathroom. And lo and behold. My stomach does not agree with anchovies. I start throwing up. Again and again. And use just about the whole toilet roll to clean up after myself. When I went to flush, the toilet got clogged. So I open up the back of the toilet. And what's inside? A fucking brick of weed. TL. Doctor, no ordinary sandwich. So I have this friend John, who was in a friends with benefits situation with a girl, Jane. We'd never met Jane, but they knew each other since they used to go to camp together. And also we all attended the same college. Well, after we graduated, their situation remained the same. John would hang out, and he wouldn't shut up about Jane. Every story was about Jane. After a while, we finally met Jean at this bar. I was hammered, and was talking to Jean trying to get to know her. Somehow it slipped out that he wouldn't shut up about her. And I used the phrase, "You're the one." The next day, Jane gave John an ultimatum. Either they were going to be together officially, or she was leaving. John said he liked what they had going and didn't want to be exclusive. So he bailed. Jane ended up dating some guy for a year. And almost got married. But she knew she wanted to be with John. John fooled around with a bunch of girls. But he knew he wanted to be with Jane. Eventually they found their way back to one another 5 years later. And got engaged almost immediately. They've been married for 2 years. And have a beautiful baby boy. I like to think I had a hand in their coming together. Despite me fucking up my boy's good situation he had going. I have 3 kids. And all of them were induced. When my second was born, we were leaving for the hospital at 4:30 am. While it was still dark, we let our German Shepherd out to do her business before we left. Since we would be gone all day. While we were outside, she ran up to an animal that we thought was our cat. Turns out, it was a skunk. And she got sprayed. She then proceeds to freak out, run between us, wiping the skunk spray on us in the process, and run back into the house. Her crate was in the very back of the house. And she managed to wipe the spray on everything between the front door and her crate. It was too late for us to try to clean ourselves up, since we were supposed to be at the hospital by 5 am. When we get to the hospital, needless to say, we stank. We explained the situation to everyone, who gave us a strange look. And no one could help but giggle about it. The nurses were hooking me up to the IVs and monitors were laughing by the time we were settled in. Over the next few hours, we had every nurse in the maternity ward coming in and out of our room, wanting to hear the story. It had become quite the rumor. They all said it made their shift an interesting one. I'll make this as short as possible. My girlfriend and I were at a wedding this past weekend. Great wedding. Met some great people. Ate and drank a whole lot. The after party was at a casino where we proceeded to have a couple more drinks. It was at this time my girlfriend decides it would be a good idea to gamble. I ask her if she's sure because we may not be thinking strategically after all the bourbon and champagne. She said, "Yeah babe. I used to go to Vegas a few times a year when I lived in LA. I can play Jack Black, I know, no problem. Gimme $100. So I give her $100. I figure she'll find a lower limit table and take her time. But no. She wants to do this quick and dirty like some kind of drive-by. I'm not much of a gambler. So I figure she knows what she's doing. She sits down at the blackjack table and places a bet. The dealer deals and she's got 3 cards. She says, "Excuse me. Am I almost seeing double or do I have 3 cards?" The dealer says, "You're at a poker table. Blackjack is that away." She turns around and looks at me with a smirk I'll never forget and proceeds to play the hand and wins close to $400. We're still not exactly sure, and we got the F out of there before we could decide to blow it on roulette or something stupid. I have no doubt that there were a couple of people at the table that night that thought we were running some kind of hustle. Then sex. Went to a party, which quickly got boring. Me and my friend were messing about hitting each other. This quickly escalated into a full fight, not serious. It was common for our friendship, then this girl comes over asking to join in. We let her fight me, thinking it'll just be a bit of a mess about. Instead she runs straight for me and start trying to claw my face off. I hold her off asking for help as this girl has gone absolutely mental. She runs at me again so I pick her up and put her to the floor to subdue her. Turns out she hit the floor a little harder than expected and I've chipped her front tooth. I then think that some guys are going to go full white knight on me and beat my ass. She gets up screaming, crying, blood pouring from her mouth and attacks me some more. She's screaming "Get away from me" while repeatedly slapping me in the face. And she rips me shirt almost clean off. After this fiasco has died down and people have helped, me and my friend decide we should leave as we've caused a shitstorm. We get told it's fine but we insist that we should go. The girl whose tooth I chipped proceeds to come up to me, apologizes and ask for my number. A couple days ago, I was sitting in my language arts class, doing an analysis of this passage. To pass the time, I texted my friend "I'm bored." A few minutes later, I look up and see my teacher grinning at me. She says to me, "You do realize who you sent that text to, right?" I was so confused because I thought I sent it to my friend. But then I realized I had misdialed and sent the text to my language arts teacher. Thankfully, she just laughed it off. The next day, in physics, I receive a text message from her saying "Are you bored?" Me being the sassy man that I am and being well aware that she has a class, I replied, "Shouldn't you be teaching right now?" I got a lot of high fives for that. And the best part is that I'm not in trouble for anything.